So family and friends compulsion education continues tonight in the youth suite. Go, if you've never been there, you can start any week you want. Go right down this hallway in the back and turn to your left and you'll see that's where that class will be tonight. If you want to talk about what we're talking about in the message tonight afterwards with somebody right away, we have a care room opened up right out this door. You can spend some time talking to somebody about what we're talking about tonight. Want to also welcome people at our other locations and welcome people that are joining us online. So step 7 is tonight. Every one of these words is important. Every one of the words in every step matters. You know, if you really begin to unravel it, you'll begin to see what I'm talking about. Humbly, big deal. Asked, huge deal. Humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. Humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. We could do the same question every week. What would it take, do you think, for you to be satisfied in your life? And you know, you're going to start off going, well, you know, if I had, you might think like if I had this much money or if I had this or if I could do this, it's like all that would be good. But would it, in the end, would it satisfy you? Because my bias is that satisfaction is going to come only in the heart. You know, there are going to be some other kind of satisfaction that's going to do it for us. It's going to have to be a satisfaction of the heart. And I've met people that have that are doing really, really well financially that are completely unsatisfied in the heart. And I've met people that are not doing well at all financially that are like unbelievably satisfied in the heart. And heart satisfaction, man, it is a priceless, priceless gift. What would it take for you to be satisfied? We've used this definition. Satisfaction has to do with being fully known, fully loved, and fully restored by God. And so tonight, I wanted to add this to that. Satisfaction is allowing God to be your freedom fighter. Amen? Satisfaction is allowing God to be your freedom fighter. In America, one of our institutions that we've kind of grown up, you know, all of us grown up believing, and it's fine. I mean, it's fine in 100,000 different ways of life, but it doesn't work well in recovery. And that is, I mean, if you go into the Bible, you'll see that the people that God struggles with and the people that struggle with God, they got the exact same problem that we do here tonight, and that is us. Amen? That is us. We are our problem because we're human beings and we have a brokenness about us that's been in us since the day we were born. And it has to do with us deciding that maybe we can do this job of God better than God. Amen? In the end, that's kind of what brings us to a place of compulsion, doesn't it? I think that instead of going God and asking God to remove the pain that is in my life or helping me to walk through it with Him, I'm going to figure out some way to medicate that on my own, right? I'm going to figure out some way to accommodate that on my own. I'm going to figure out some way to be in charge and to stay in charge. And so is it true that satisfaction would be allowing God to be your freedom fighter? The two words that start off in this step are, number 1, humble. I humbly asked God. Humbly asked. Humble and action. Humility and action. Why the humility? Why the humility? Because I got to get to a realization that I have been trying for a long time now to fix what is going on with me on my own, right? Maybe it started off that someone in my life kept telling me, man, I think this is getting out of control in your life. Maybe they're telling you that right now. And maybe while they're telling you that, you're becoming more and more and more and more angry at them. Why don't they just shut up? Why don't they just take care of their own life? Why don't they just attend to their own business? Why do they have to keep bugging me about it? I'm aware something's wrong. I don't need you to tell me about it. We all know how that goes, don't we? We all know about what that defensiveness feels like, right? We all know, we're all pretty good at that because, again, we are wired up to be able to avoid everything that God is really about. Truth, for starters. So humility, because I've got to realize, going all the way back to step 1, and see now, you see when you get into a step like 7, you begin to see how these steps of these 12 steps feed on and build off of each other, right? You begin to see it. And so the work that you do or do not do in the previous steps is going to create an incompleteness as things move forward, right? It's like I talked about in step 4. You get to step 4, you go, I'm going to make a fearless moral inventory of my life. Searching and fearless moral inventory of my life. Am I really going to do that? Am I really going to do that if I haven't turned over my life and my will to God? Am I really going to do that fully? I'm going to hedge my bet, am I not? If I don't understand step 2, which says only God can restore my life to sanity, if I'm not really going with that, and I believe that's still me, and if I'm going, I'm willing to turn over some of my problems to God, but not my will and my life to God, but some of my stuff, I'm willing to turn over some of my issues, I'm willing to let God function in my life as a fireman, I'm willing to let God function in my life as a handyman. You know, God can be a handyman for me in a day he wants. But then when you get done on my problems, get out. Because I want to live my own life the way I want to live it, and I really don't want you interfering with me. Like, all that is the stuff that's going on in steps 1 through 3. Man, when you get to step 7, if you haven't built off of steps 1, 2, and 3, if that hasn't happened, this is going to be a problem. Number 1, the humility step of I'm going to humbly ask God, and then I'm going to ask God in the first place. If I haven't turned my life and my will over to God, I'm not going to ask God to do anything important ultimately. Amen? It's one thing to ask God to do something like, listen, help me find another job, or help me. It's something altogether to have God go, I want you to remove in me, God, the stuff that is broken. Because in step 4, there are a lot of things come out. In step 4, what comes out in that 4th step is you're going to write down, the way you've hurt other people and the things that have happened in your life, but you're going to also write down the people that have hurt you. And it's very easy in step 4 to become obsessed with everything that everybody else did to you. And you gotta attend to that in order to get healthy. That's why we push so hard on trauma. You gotta attend to the trauma in your life. You gotta attend to the trauma in your life. You gotta attend to the trauma in your life. If you don't attend to the trauma in your life, the trauma is gonna attend to you. Amen? It's going to. Like, we have to deal with what happened to you. We have to deal with who did it. We have to deal with what it made you feel like. We gotta deal with all of that. And then we gotta eventually deal with the forgiveness piece of that. Not like we're going to make it like it didn't happen, but you need to be able to do the forgiveness piece eventually so that you can be free. All that is a part of getting to this step. If that isn't done, this is going to be really difficult to do. These steps, you don't walk your way through them in 6 weeks. You might get an overview of them in 12 weeks, but like we're doing, or like in a group, but it's going to take 2-3 years to do these steps. 2 or 3 years, at least. And this step is saying this. Mark Beebe, since one of the steps is that I am humbly asking God to remove my defects of character, what might that mean? That might mean that I have defects of character. Amen? That might mean that I have defects of character. I don't know if any of you guys, I don't know if you were raised up as a Christian or not raised as a Christian, but if you were raised in the kind of a church that on an every week basis, like in the Methodist church, the official hymnal and stuff, which we don't use much, but in the Lutheran church, the official hymnal, definitely. I was down at this church. It was nerve-wracking for me, but I was down at this Lutheran church. I'm doing it 2 weeks in a row for a friend of mine. He was the pastor there. He retired in September. So I told him when he retired, I'm like, I'll cover a couple Sundays while your guys are like looking for another pastor. So I did. I was there last Sunday, and I'm going to go back this Sunday. So, you put on a robe and stuff, which is now like it's been a long time. So really that's kind of awkward. And then you follow this whole Lutheran book, like the liturgy. And I was there last summer, and I sat down after the first part of the service to get to the offering. I've never been so glad to get to the offering in my life. Amen. And I told Carol, I am working my butt off here to get through this, to get to the preaching, man. It was unbelievable. But the thing about that is, in that service, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to have this official confession of sins. Anybody ever seen that in a service? Do you have it every week where you go? No, but you go, yeah, you definitely do. You got it. You really got it. You're the professional sinner confessor. Amen? You are the professional. You're like good at it. But think about this. When you do that, you do it in public with other people, and the stuff you're talking about, somebody else wrote about, and it's non-specific, right? And it's really, we're not going to go all the way into your character defects. Like your character defects, like in my case, would be like, it's God sitting down with you and going through stuff that you know about you, but you don't want to know about you. Are you following me? It's stuff you know about you right now tonight, but you don't want to know about you. I mean, more people walk out of AA meetings because somebody stumbles onto a character defect of theirs and happens to drill on it in a meeting, and they don't happen to be talking to them personally, but they happen to be on their stuff, and they're, I'm not going there anymore. I'm like, I didn't get anything out of it. It's like, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. But it's like my character defect, you hit on mine. Like, it's like God sitting down and going, well, Mark, let's talk about something like patience in your case. And I mean, I want to go, what are you talking about, Willis? I mean, like, what do you mean? That's like an endearing quality. And we all have ways of making sure that we talk about our character defects as if, number one, we have nothing really to do with them. We were born with them. False. Number two, we do not take ownership of them. False. Number three, they're really not that bad of a defect because I can show you some other people's defects that are far more jacked up than mine. False. And number four, that they're really not, that's just my nature. False. I really don't like that part at all. That's just my nature. That's false. And number four, that, you know what? There's really nothing I can do about it anyway. That one statement right there, though, is absolutely true in recovery. That I cannot and will not address my own character defects. These are not things that my actual character defects, like in my case, I mean, I have a million, but the patience one, here's what I know. I don't care how hard I work in the next 6 months, how much I dedicate time and energy to losing my character defect of patience, just one. And at the end of that time in June, do you know what? I will be no farther along with that character defect than I am right now. I might dress it up prettier. I might try to make it look a little better. I might try to make it look a little nicer. I might try to show you that I'm putting in a little more effort to deal with that character defect. But do you know what? At the end of 6 months, if I believe I'm the one that's addressing it, I'll still have it. David says it right in one of the Psalms. He goes, take away, wash me from my character defect. He says, wash me from my sin. That's another word for it. Wash me from my sin. Take that away from me and restore my spirit. Restore my spirit, God. Remove me. Remove me from the stuff in me that's broken. Remove me, release me from my character defects. Why is that an important statement? Why is this step? Why does it drill on? Humbly ask God, not ask God to help me, not ask God to work with me on it, not ask God to discipline that in me so that I can become better at it. And this is a point blank submission step. Do you know what submission is? Submission can mean to you, it may be a bad word for you, where submission means for you, it's like someone is stronger than you are, and they put their, if you've been abused, you really feel this way, they put their foot on your neck and they don't let you up. But submission may also be what Jesus said to his Father when he was on a cross. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Into your hands, I'm going to lay my spirit. Submission may also be an image of, I don't know if you had a healthy or a not healthy relationship with your dad or your grandfather or whoever, but it can also be an image of crawling up into your dad's lap or crawling up into your grandfather's lap, or crawling up into somebody's lap who was bigger than you were at the time, who you trusted, and knowing that they are just there to love you. And this submission step is, I am asking God to remove from my life this defect of character. Not to help, this is how we want to do it in America, not to help me do it, not to help me get better at it, and not to help me get in control of that character defect, but I want to ask God to release me from it. I need to ask God to remove it from my life. Amen. I need to ask him to do that. Why is this so important? It's so important because these character defects are going to dog all of us right back into a relapse. Our character defects are going to dog every one of us in this room right back into a relapse. And the more we run from them, just like everything else, the sicker we get. Amen? So I take humble action. I asked God to do it. God wasn't going to just come in and snatch it from me. I asked him to remove this character defect from me. Here's a great quote. The purpose of the divine therapy, I like that term, divine therapy. The purpose of divine therapy is the healing of the roots of all of our problems, the roots. Not the outcomes, are you following that? But the roots of all of our problems, and to transform our attitudes and indeed the whole of our human nature into the mind and the heart of Jesus. You're like, well, man, I'm not that close to Jesus. That sounds like religious talk to me. It's like, no, pay attention. Transform. You're not going to transform it. He is. Transform our attitudes and indeed the whole of our human nature into the mind and heart of Christ. Listen, there was this guy, Paul. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He wrote a whole bunch of the second half of the Bible. Paul, you know what Paul's job was? If you don't know anything about him, this little story will blow you away. It's like it can't be true. It is. Paul killed Christians. Paul killed Christians for a living. Paul was hired by the Hebrew church of that day and by the government authority, or the Roman government authority, to kill Christians. Why is that? Well, they were competition for the Jewish church, and this new church was a problem of sort of insurgency or rebellion for the Roman government. So Paul gets paid to kill Christians. He talks all the time about the character defects that God removed from his life. He talks all the time about the transformation that has occurred in him. He talks about what it means to live in the heart and the mind of Jesus. And man, if that's Paul, what about us? The quote goes on, in other words, to introduce us through grace into the interior life of God. What is going on in God's heart can also and will also go on in your heart and go on in my heart. This involves a transformation of our attitudes, faculties, and bodies so that we can receive the maximum amount of transmission of divine life that is possible given the limits of human nature. Man, it's a remove and replace. It's a remove and replace operation. An R&R, right? Not relax and rest, but a remove and replace operation. Where is this? How does this stuff happen? Look it up in the Bible, man. Get out a Bible and look up John. And look up John 14, 15, and 16. Look up the part where it says to you, Jesus says, here's what's going to happen. I am going to take up residence in you. I am going to start living in your life. I'm going to start living, if you'll let me, in your heart. I'm going to start living in your thoughts. I am taking residence up in you. And as close as I am to my Father, you and I, Jesus says, we're going to be that close. But see, like to have that, we got to clear the junk out of our heart, amen? And those are our character defects. But we're not going to clear it out. God is. It's a remove and replace. I'm not just, actually in this step, I'm not just asking God to remove my impatience. I am asking God to replace my impatience with a lovingness that is going to come out of me not being impatient. Are you following that? And that lovingness, that deeper lovingness is going to give, and my willingness to be with somebody in the way that they need to be with them and not the way or time frame that I want to be with them. And they're giving things time to do what they're supposed to do according to God and not according to Mark Beebe. Like, man, if I actually were to be released from this character defect fully, I would be a lot better at what I do. I would be a lot more loving, and I would have a lot more impact on a lot more people. Those are the facts. Why are those the facts? Because God he's replacing that character defect in me with himself, with his spirit, with his love, with his attitude. Think of the difference just in my relationships if that was true. Think of that. And also ask yourself this. If you continue to hold on to your character defects, because this is what I got to ask myself. If you continue to hold on to your character defects, whatever they are, if I continue to hold on to my impatience, in my case, just one of them, in my case, what am I getting out of it? I'm getting something out of that character defect, am I not? There is a gain. The enemy is definitely trying to convince me of the gain every day. Every day. What is the gain? What is the gain? This is a remove and replace operation. Here's another good quote. God is humble and never comes into your life or mine if not first invited. But I love this part. But God will also use just about any circumstance to get invited. Amen? God will use, do you not think that's true? God will use any circumstance available of stuff that's happening to you to get invited into your life. Amen? Yep. And it goes on. God's totally positive and lasting way of removing our shortcomings is to fill up the hole, remove and replace, with something much better. More, that's what I was talking about, more luminous and more satisfying. Then all of our old strategies, including the addiction itself, are exposed for the false programs for happiness they really are. Man, I want you to ask yourself, is your compulsion tonight a false program of happiness? A false program of happiness. When you first started using sex, pornography, drugs, alcohol, work, gambling, I don't care what it was, food, when you first started using that, did you or did you not believe that that was a happiness train? Were you or were you not convinced that whatever that was that had a hold of you, that you didn't know had a hold of you, was the happiness train? And you knew exactly what you were doing. And do you remember, if you've been at this a while, when somehow the happiness train wasn't the happiness train? And you're like, that is a false program of happiness. It is not making me happy. And I got to do something about it. It's like, no, you don't. Like when people sit there, I know like when I was going to meetings as a pastor, right? And I would go to Al-Anon. And I would listen to these people who I frankly did not believe what they said. And they would begin to explain to me some of the stuff I'm talking to you about. They'd be talking about, freedom, and they would be talking about character defects, which really pissed me off because I don't have a character defect. She does. She's the alcoholic. This is a stupid meeting. This is not what I came here for. And they would talk to me about the same circumstances I was in, they were in. But they would talk to me about this joy in their life. And I'd be like, how do you have joy right now? Because they were much farther along in allowing Jesus to be their freedom fighter than I was. Much farther along. I wanted to be my own. The reason I stayed in that hell was because I chose to be there. The reason I stayed in that hell was because I chose to be there. I wanted to be my own freedom fighter. I wanted to be my own freedom fighter. I wanted my own program of happiness. You know, and the truth of it is, it can only be God. This is a simple program in the end, isn't it? The way you get free is you realize it can only be God. The way you release your character, you get your character defects released is you go, it can only be God. I'm not going to do it. My willpower's for crap. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be okay with my willpower. Some guy just tonight pulls up, introduces himself for 27 seconds, explains to me he had tried to call us 5 times this week and he didn't get an answer on the phone. He goes, I about 5 years ago, I just stopped using drugs. So I did it on my own. And I go, you did? Yeah. I'm like, so do you go to any kind of meetings? Saying, nope. I did it on my own. I think this would be kind of a good program maybe for my kids. I'm like, well, if you don't think this would be a good program for you, don't bring your kids. I'm like, why do that? I'm like, actually, what we do here on Thursday, this is a crappy program for you, man, because you still think you're in charge. I'm going to tell you not to come. Like you're going to be bored, and then you'll think you're pissing me off because you won't be agreeing with anything we're saying. Don't come, man. I want you to come when you realize you did not do this by yourself. You stopped using your drug of choice, but you are nowhere close to being sober. You just stopped using for a while, which makes you irritating to me because you come up with this thing of you did it on your own. He said, I couldn't believe it. He goes, this must be because it's Christmas. I don't know. He goes, well, I'll see you next week. I'm like, okay, I hope so. I'll introduce him next week. This is my friend. He pissed me off and I pissed him off. And look, he's here. He's here tonight. That's good. It was quite the talk, man. It really was. I look for someone to come and help me, but no one gives me a passing thought. No one will help me. Ever felt like that? No one cares about what happens to me. Then I pray to you, O Lord. I say, you are my place of refuge. Ask God to remove my defects of character. You are my place of refuge. You are all I really want in life. Hear my cry, for I am very low. Rescue me from my persecutors, for they are too strong for me. Bring me out of prison, so I can thank you. Psalm 142, man, it's really got to be, it really does kind of got to be you or God. Are you going to ask you to remove your defects of character? In 30 more years, you'll still be at it. Or are you going to ask God? Are you going to humbly ask God to do it? What you cannot do for yourself. Man, that's hard. That's health. And that's freedom. Thanks so much in Jesus' sweet name. We're going to open up the space for an altar. Amen.